Hi girls, sending lots of love from over in college. So I've got the book ready for a bedtime story. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to do. Apparently you still have to write essays while you're in quarantine. Who knew? But I thought I'd introduce you to someone. This is my bedtime bear. So he's a Care Bear. I don't know if you guys know the Care Bears, but they're super cool. And they have little symbols on their tummies. And when they're in tricky situations, they shoot out beams of light and love from their tummies. Anyway, this one's called Bedtime Bear. Well, his actual name is Bogey, because my dad thought it'd be really funny when I was little and didn't know any better to call him Bogey because he's green. But anyway, he's been my best friend for years. He's very, very old as me. He's 33. Very, very old. But yeah, he's going to sit here with me while I read you the story. So, this is The Worst Witch, All at Sea. Chapter 1. We've got a super cool picture here. Here we go. A violent snowstorm greeted the pupils of Miss Cackle's Academy for Witches as they returned to school for the first day of the summer term. There were 2 terms dividing the school year. The winter term, which began in September, continuing until January, and the summer term, which began in March, ending in July. With 5 solid months to each with 5 solid months to each term, you can imagine how bleak it felt during the middle months when every minute seemed like an hour, with no light flickering at the end of the tunnel. The girls were used to appalling weather for the first few weeks of the summer term because it was so early in the year, but this time it had surpassed itself. There we go. We've got Miss Cackle here, looking a bit worried. Miss Cackle, the kindly headmistress of the school, watched from her study window as the pupils arrived in 1s and 2s, battling to stay on their broomsticks, cloaks turned inside out, and summer dresses flapping wildly in the screaming wind. Mildred Hubble, a second year, already renowned as the worst witch in school, lurched out of the yellow-grey clouds with a crust of snow covering her broomstick, cat, suitcase and summer dress, which was a new design this year. Here she is. Miss Hardbroom, Mildred's horrifically strict form mistress, had decided that the old design of black and grey checks was too frivolous for the girls and had persuaded the headmistress to have them replaced with nice, sensible, plain black. Miss Cackle had meekly agreed with Miss Hardbroom's plan, as she usually did, being a person who always avoided any trouble. But she had secretly rather liked the old uniform. The whole business had caused much merriment among the girls, who could scarcely believe that anyone, even Miss Hardbroom, could consider black and grey checks and grey ankle socks to be frivolous. Almost as frivolous as a cassock. Mildred wondered if she was actually frozen onto her broomstick as she struggled to steer it over the wall and into the yard. She turned to check that her tabby cat was still with her, as the poor creature was terrified of flying at the best of times and had been yowling his head off for the whole journey. He was. But as they cleared the tops of the gates by inches, the little cat attempted to jump off, causing Mildred to crash land into a deep snowdrift, which curved in an elegant arc against one of the broomstick sheds. Here she is, crash landing. It was quite sheltered in the yard, and Mildred lay in the snow, getting her breath back, watching the other pupils coming into land. Most of them more successfully than herself. "You are a pain, Tabby," said Mildred, her teeth chattering with cold. "How am I ever going to get anywhere in this place while I'm stuck with a cat like you?" Tabby shook himself, and snow sprayed over Mildred's already snow-covered face. She even had icicles hanging from the brim of her hat, and Tabby's fur stood out in little frozen peaks. They made a sorry pair. "Maud, is that you?" Mildred called out as a hunched bundle of broomstick and baggage wobbled over the wall and glided into the snow a few yards away. "Millie!" yelled a voice which was unmistakably that of her best friend. "Here they are." There she is, coming over the wall. "Incredible weather, isn't it? And they call it summer term? Summer?" Mildred scrambled to her feet, brushed off as much snow as she could, and waded across to Maud, dragging her suitcase and broomstick behind her. Tabby had now assumed his usual position, draped around Mildred's shoulders like a fur stole. "Do you think they might light a few fires as a special concession?" asked Mildred. "I shouldn't think so," said Maud. "You know what they're like. Healthy fresh air at all times." "What about the uniform then? Frivolous, I ask you." The yard was rapidly filling up with pupils, all stamping their feet to keep warm and hoping that they might be allowed inside instead of assembling in the yard as usual. They made a rather dramatic sight, dotted about the crowds and against the crows, against the glaring white. The main door opened, and Ethel Hallow, a member of Mildred's class, generally known for her bossiness, especially towards Mildred, appeared with a note which she pinned to the door. The note read, "No one is allowed inside without permission. Girls must assemble in lines in the yard. When the bell rings, they should proceed to the cloakrooms in single file to deposit their bags, and from there proceed to morning assembly in the great hall." "I told you," Maud said grimly. "And how did Ethel get inside when we're all out here? That's what I'd like to know. Look at her, all dry and comfortable, when everyone else is frozen stiff, waiting to be summoned out of the storm." "Watch out, Maud," said Mildred. "She's beckoning to us." "Mildred Hubble!" shouted Ethel from the shelter of the doorway. "Miss Cackle wants to see you in her study straight away. Didn't take you long this time, did it?" She couldn't resist sneering. "How many minutes have you been here? 5, is it?" She pulled a face and ducked inside, closing the door behind her. "Oh, Maud," said Mildred. "Miss Cackle must have seen me crash landing. You think she'd have let me off a bit with a force 9 gale and a blizzard going on?" "Never mind, Mill," comforted Maud. "I wish she wanted to see me. There'll be a fire roaring in her study, and at least you'll be able to warm up. Anyway, I bet it's not even about your crash landing. Probably something perfectly pleasant." "Perfectly pleasant," giggled Mildred. "Well, I'd better go and find out what I've done. Why don't you see if you can find Enid while I'm in there? She must have arrived by now." Enid was their other friend. "Good idea," said Maud. "Best of luck then." Mildred gathered up her suitcase and broom and made her way up the snow-clad stone steps. and in through the heavy front door. And that's the end of chapter 1. Here's a little picture of Mildred making her way in the snow. Lots of love.